Well, let's see if Mason can stick some moons on the board or whether the Merit Lodge is going to wake up not a mountain. Going into the next match here. Match 2 for Season 2 of the MTGO Masters. We're looking at... God, it's wild how fair of a hand that is, huh? From both players at that.
Yeah, it's it's amusing that we live in a world where, like, once upon a time in grief scam are fair things, but they
Mhm.
very much are here. And I mean, for Honor, this ends like pretty close to ideal in terms of how it matches up against Mason. It's really soft to Blood Moon, but everything in Honor's deck is. But with the Thespian stage and once upon a time to look for Dark Depths in response to a discard spell, this hand has a lot of resiliency against top season grief scam, which is what Mason's deck wants to do early.
Yeah, that Chrome Mox may end up doing some heavy lifting as well to get around the Blood Moon, as the Once Upon a Time does in fact find a Magus of the Moon here. Or a Simian Spirit Guide. I gotta imagine the Magus is the pick here. Like you said, it feels like this matchup is based around Mason being able to get that human wizard on the table.
Yeah, and Magus is really nice here because specifically because of Anna's double Urza Saga hand. A lot of the time, something like a double Saga hand might be able to play a fair deck against the Grief Scam pretty well. You just get to make pretty big constructs quickly and sort of go over the top of what the Grief Scam deck is doing. But with Magus, those Sagas are going to not even count as lands for Anna to develop as mana. And that maybe gives Mason an out at least to win this game.
Well, we'll see. One of the Once Upon a Times was taken. We'll see if the second Once Upon a Time uh, on Arnie's side and also of the match can find something. And it does indeed find something, a Dark Depths. And we are going to strip. I mean, a Chrome Mox with nothing to imprint is a little sad, but also I don't know how much this Soul Guide Lantern is doing in this match beyond, preventing maybe a grease scam. Ooh.
Yeah, this Chalice is pretty close to blank cardboard, so you might as well play it to shut off the Chrome Mox and Mason spot. So makes a lot of sense to take the Soul Guide Lantern at that point, because the Chalice is just doing nothing. Shutting off the Chrome Mox itself is important. If the Chrome Mox had been able to add mana, then we could have maybe seen Dark Depths turn online before Mason could get Magus down. As it stands, things are suddenly kind of looking pretty good for Mason, where he can just try and wait to he can just play a couple of turns, develop Magus of the Moon, and Testament Sage Dark Depths can't be turned on before that.
Yeah, just needs that third land or, well, no Chrome Mox in this case, but a Simian Spirit Guide to get that Magus of the Moon out there. Uh, Arnie does have some interaction in the form of Dismember as a way of getting the Magus off the table. But like you said, impairing the Urza Sagas, uh, not great.
Yeah, Dismember pretty notable here because the way Magus works, it's really good against Dark Depths if it doesn't get removed. But if it does get removed, but if Mason plays it out and Anna does have a removal spell, he can do something like go Dark Depths, play it while Magus is in play, so it's just a mountain, and then after that, then remove the Magus and get a 20/20 Merit Lage because the Dark Depths won't have any counters on it. So kind of a double-edged sword a bit for Mason if Anna is able to find that removal spell.
Yeah, and while our matches are going to be faster than say previous weeks, um, we are making sure that all the viewers at home understand how layers work and how timestamps work. Thanks to Magus of the Moon Dark Depth shenanigans. Speaking of, Meg is going to hit the table and well, hopefully teach us all about the interactions between sagas and Blood Moon effects here.
Yeah, Anna appears to be playing cards that are weak to Blood Moon Typal, as these depth decks tend to.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a little awkward here that maybe if Anna already had a Greenland, you could try and maybe fetch a Beseiju to deal with that Chalice, but Oh, never mind. Tutoring to the top of your deck, a pretty good way to beat a chalice as well.
It's not bad. The depth stack does play some number of basics. It looks like Arnie's on, well, 2. That's not that much, but who knows? In this field, it might be considered on the higher end here. Firing off this into the north, trying to get a basic swamp there. Now we have all of our colors, which opens Arnie up to also drawing an Assassin's Trophy to deal with the Magus of the Moon, but doesn't have that much time.
Yeah, it's pretty much a one-turn clock here, so it's trophy or bust, I think.
And that Thoughtseize as the draw, to me, looks like bust.
Yeah, pretty tough where applying a really quick clock in a matchup like this is also pretty important because even a dismember here wouldn't have cut it, right? A dismember on the Magus and it gets Malakir rebirthed, but Anna's taking 2 off of the dismember to even cast it in the first place and then dies to the grief. So really just had to be the one-off Assassin's Trophy that turn, which is not a lot of outs.
And it looks like we are indeed going to game 2. Mason Clark picking up that game 1 here. Now, you mentioned the Blood Moons in the sideboard. That's got to be a pretty easy swap-a-rooney. We thinking anything else here?
Blood Moons are pretty much the main thing Mason wants here. We see a copy of Hidetsugu consumes all. That's nice against Urza's Saga and the Construct plan out of Anna's deck. Just like a little more resilience there is it's kind of nice, making sure you don't lose a fair game to this depth deck. But yeah, I think it comes down to Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, or bust. And having Blood Moons on the side plus 4 Magus in the moon, Magus in the main puts a really tough squeeze on Anno, where he needs both creature removal and artifact enchantment removal to deal with Magus and Blood Moon, and needs to make sure he draws the right combination of it to line up with whatever Mason draws. While at the same time, Mason gets to get rid of a lot of his dead cards. We see those Leyline of the Voids getting trimmed and Chalice of the Voids getting cut entirely, and all of a sudden Mason gets to just play a deck full of actual cards. So matchup little on the tough side game 1, but a lot better post bod for Mason. So Troy's really glad to have picked up that game 1 and now only need 1 post bod game.
Yeah, snagging that game 1 is huge in this matchup, and then especially because as we go to the sideboards, I mean Arnie's got to imagine that the Blood Moons are coming in, but also having to respect the creature plan of Mason's deck here. So I'm just kind of toying around with some sideboard options here, looking at the Fatal Push, the Shouldred's Edict. If you are on in Arnie's position here, are you thinking about these Force of Vigors? That going too deep?
I think it's a little too deep. Not because the card isn't good here. It's just against the scam deck that really tax your resources in hand. We saw the Grief Scam get cast that game, and Thoughtseize is also a pretty big part of it. So it's hard. Force of Vigor would be nice if it were able to reliably get cast for free under a Blood Moon, but the problem is that very often having Force plus a second green card against a Blood Moon is really, really difficult, given how Scam taxes your hand.
Players looking at their opening hands here. Got some interesting back and forth stuff going on here. Mason has a couple of Thoughtseizes and also the potential to power out a Blood Moon as early as turn 2. Arnie does have some tools of preventing the Blood Moon from even hitting the table with some hand attack, and the ability to blow it up with the Assassin Trophy. I'm proud of these two players for being so interactive.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we'd set a better example for them, but
it's
glad they're doing it nonetheless.
We set the extreme, and now we're going to kind of tell people, hey, it's okay. You don't have to worry about catching your bus in the next 30 minutes. There is still plenty of Magic to play here. Opting to put the Assassin's Trophy into the Chrome box and setting up an Into the North right away. We got the Dark Depths. We got a Nurborg in play. That's a spicy 1-2 punch this early.
Yeah, and now we're looking at 8 outs for Anna to actually just combo next turn with the Thespian Stages and the Vampire Hex Mages. And then on top of that, There's the like Inquisition to interact, and yeah, the expedition map just has to be taken in that spot because if it doesn't, it sets up uh a combo kill for Anna the turn after by getting a test spin stage this turn.
Mhm.
And even as is, Anna can just play a land, put Lurrus in hand because Urbog makes that Dark Depth Staff for mana, and then in another 2 turns is once again threatening to combo with that expedition map.
Yeah, the Lurrus as a companion for this deck, there's something about it that feels a little off. I mean, that might just be Lurrus in general. Pretty incredible magic card right there. Um, but I imagine that's the game plan. No, opting to keep up the fatal push here.
Well, we know that Mason has a Thoughtseize in hand, right? That was revealed off
Mhm.
the Inquisition. So, given that knowledge, Anna can just not. If Anna puts the Lurrus in hand, Mason has nothing else to do with this turn, as far as we know. He just threw the grief, but didn't have it before. So, Anna's incentivized to just not play into it and to not play into this thought season, just wait to play out the Lurrus until Mason is forced to get rid of the Thoughtseize at some point, or there's a second threat drawn, forcing Anna to Thoughtseize one of two things, both of which are pretty strong,
Mhm.
and then letting Anna develop the other threat the next.
Oh yeah, removing the ice counter. Let's see a fair air quotes dark depths here. That would really just throw all expectations of our degenerate week 2 here out the window. I don't think it's likely to happen, especially since we've drawn a Sylvan Scrying here to find ourselves a Thespian stage and thus make a Dark Depths. But,
Yeah, for
I could dream.
it's a reasonable dream to have, I think. I mean, this scam deck can peter out, maybe not this game, there's a grief, but the scam deck can just like draw a bunch of interaction in there. Maybe we could see a Dark Depths turned on fully game 3. I still believe.
I'm looking at Mason 75 here, and I am not seeing a single card that can get a Merit Lodge off the table.
Yeah, red and black not very good with dealing with 2020 indestructibles.
There's always Dead Gone. There's always Dead Gone.
Yeah, I believe Anna might even have that in one of his decks, so it's been resistant this week, just
Mhm.
not in scam.
And yeah, looks like Honor takes game 2 there, generating a Merit Lodge, smashing for 20. We're going to see if our players are making any additional changes. Mason's board feels a little locked in. Maybe the Chalice of the Void now that we're on the play. Arnie's tinkering with a lot of the lands. This is kind of the nice thing about the lands decks is that you are packing, 37 or sorry, not 37, 27 or 28 lands. So you can afford to cut some of the cards such as the Urza Sagas there. But,
Yeah.
we feeling like we're just shipping back, what we had for game 2?
Yeah, I like having two Urza Saga in the board at least. Urza Saga much weaker on the draw than it is on the play because you don't get to activate under a Blood Moon that's coming down, so you're just getting no value. And then yeah, for Mason, it's just maybe adjusting number of like mediocre cards he has, like we saw Leyline of the Void is a card that he had a couple of. Not the most exciting card, but trying to figure out how impactful something like that is to his game plan.
Players looking at their opening hands here. Arnie opting to keep theirs, Mason going down to 6. The classic, technically a zero lander, but there's also a Once Upon a Time and a Malakir Rebirth, and it's complicated, and we don't have to get into it.
Yeah, now Mason could just lose the game here if he didn't find a land. Yeah, there's all these like not technically lands in people's hands. We see the Once Upon a Time from Mason, one from Anna as well. The Chrome Mox notably is not a land and can be taken by this Grief turn 1, and that's actually pretty big. Denying Anna that extra mana is pretty important, I think, in this spot. Particularly because you want your Once Upon a Time to be able to take a Dark Depths with Thespian Stage in play, but you can't
Mhm.
really do that anymore uh, if your other mana source is taken. Dark Depths itself is not acting as a mana source. So if Anna put a Dark Depths in hand here, it would actually be pretty awkward with Mason just being able to take the Chrome Mox and uh, deny Anna mana.
Yeah, I imagine this once upon a time here for Arna, we are just hoping to hit good old fashioned mana. Ideally, something to generate black mana to maybe attack the rest of Mason's hand or keep this grief off the board. Mind you, the basic forest here is going to be able to get through any potential moons and also, cast this dismember to maybe get this grief off the table. However, unbeknownst to Arna, there is an additional copy of the Malakir Rebirth Not Dead for All. So maybe killing this grief is not the best spot, but the grief is taking the dismember there. And well, this is, I'm glad that there's somebody out here trying to double grief opponents on turn one. Good honest Magic.
Yeah, I I don't know that I'd go quite that far.
Oh, what do you mean?
Honest Magic at the very least.
Certainly more honest than what we're seeing here. Arnie is going to get to imprint the Thoughtseize into the Chromox to find black mana and throw off this Inquisition of Kozilek here. Has the Expedition map, has the Thespian stage. And like you said, with all these non-land, but kind of lands running around, this Inquisition of Kozilek is effectively taking two, or has the potential to take one of two mana sources here and decides to go with the more permanent one.
And this is looking pretty tough for Mason because at this point he needs to draw both Magus and a Magus or Blood Moon and a mana source. He doesn't have either.
Oh?
Well, that's step one.
This is why, ooh, you hate to see it. I mean, you kind of love to see it, but you hate to see it.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is just brutal here. I have a hard time imagining Mason coming back from this one. If a forest gets played this turn, that's Marit Lodge being played next, being made next turn. So there's going to be two more grief hits, plus this two off the Thoughtseize. So that's going to put Anna to 6. So I don't think Mason has lightning bolts in his deck to draw to like deal those last few points of damage.
Does not look like it. And Once Upon a Time is not what you want to see here.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time is like so there's a bunch of cards in this format that are like this really interesting decision in terms of how many to play. Like Mental Misstep, Gitaxian Probe, and Once Upon a Time are all kind of free in their own way. And so the question is like, how many of those effects do you play? Like, what's the awkwardness like? And I mean, Once Upon a Time is one where you really want to figure out the number you want to play. Like, I was a bit scared of playing a 4/4, so I only put 3 in my Eldrazi deck. And we see some people with 4, some people with 3. And then Gitaxian Probe, Mental Misstep are these really powerful cards that any deck can play. But at some point, that life starts adding up, and there's diminishing returns on like number of actual combo pieces you can have in your deck when you're playing these cards. So presents some like complicated deck building decisions, and we see like very real punishes like in that spot.